Hare Krishna. This is an unscheduled little talk. I'm here in Chawton with the many of the members of Krishna West London, or I guess Southern England. Should we show everybody? Do you feel like you look good today?
Oh yeah.
You can introduce yourselves.
Hare Krishna, Sankarshan Dasya.
Hare Krishna, Rashma.
Nabo Ramananda Das.
Haribol, Petra.
I actually don't remember who I am. Just kidding. So we were just talking, and I thought we'd share it with all of you and whoever wanted to listen. And that is, I was remembering how happy it can be. Oh, wait, that's not English. I was remembering how happy I was when I was in some particular Hare Krishna temples and temple life, because as we know, temple life works for some people, it doesn't work for some people. Some people have very positive memories, some people have less positive memories in the real world. So I was fortunate in the sense that although I've lived in many temples in the Hare Krishna movement over time in many countries, I have particularly fond memories of the temples I lived in when I was young. So someone could say, well, that's because you were naive. But I think objectively, there was something really wonderful about it. And these were the first temples I lived in, actually. I joined the Hare Krishna movement in Berkeley. And I lived in the Berkeley temple for, I guess about 8 months, until Prabhupada sent me to Boston to work on his books, where ISKCON Press was. And then I was in the Boston temple from approximately May 1970 to I guess February, with a few little interludes, till February 1971. So approximately 8 or 9 months. So I was, approximately 8 months in Berkeley, and then approximately 8 or 9 months in Boston. And then I was sent to help open the New Orleans temple around February of 1971. And I stayed there for about 3 months as a grihasta. I was married then. And then around, I guess, early May. Must have been early May, so maybe I was 2.5 months in New Orleans. And early May of 1971, the GBC for our southern zone, Satsarupa, requested that I go to Gainesville, Florida, to become the first temple president of a little preaching center there. So then I was in Gainesville, and then I was in Gainesville for several months. Let's see, for about 5 or 6 months. And then I went to be president of Houston. I was president 6 or 7 months into sannyas, but especially the early temples. So I'd like to explain some of the very valuable experiences of living in a good temple. And by that I mean a temple where leadership does not bully people, and where there is, in the proper sense, strict regulation, but not in a depersonalizing sense, and where the relationships among devotees are very happy, and there's friendship, there's real friendship and camaraderie, and the devotees are really like brothers and sisters. I don't mean a community where the women are seen as somehow inferior or as somehow dangerous, but a temple like the ones I lived in, especially Berkeley and Boston, and then of course I was president of Gainesville, so that must have been wonderful. But But yeah, temples where there's real, it's like a real spiritual family. It's like a real spiritual family. People really like each other. They're kind to each other, and yet everything's very strict. And the devotees are dedicated to spreading the Krishna consciousness movement. I also don't mean a temple where, against Prabhupada's instructions, the central point of the temple is ritual rather than preaching. Prabhupada always explained that that just as a train runs on parallel tracks, so our Krishna consciousness runs on the Bhagavad Gita, which means teaching people the Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita, and Pancharatra Glidi, which is the deity worship. And he said these are two parallel lines. And so both of these are important parts of our spiritual life. However, as Prabhupada said, the main activity of the temples is to give out knowledge of Krishna consciousness, and the worship, the puja, is meant to support the primary activity, which is teaching people about Krishna. So temples like that, temples where the relationships are based on family affection, where leadership is not overbearing, where in a movement where people are meant to become Brahmins, leaders do not treat the devotees as Shudras, in the sense that I'll do all the thinking, you just have to obey me. Prabhupada said that would ruin ISKCON. Prabhupada specifically said that mentality where the leader does all the thinking and everybody else just obeys would actually destroy ISKCON, because instead of making a Brahmin society, it makes a Shudra society. So, but I was fortunate because I lived in temples where there was a really nice spirit. And so I'd like to, because again, there are different qualities and levels of spiritual communities, and I'm not just universally endorsing anything, because but rather specific kind of temple. But still, it's a temple nonetheless, and being regulated. There was regularly, not only being regulated in general, but specifically being regulated in Krishna consciousness, so that every day at regular times you directly focus on Krishna. After all, the whole purpose of, amazingly enough, of the Krishna consciousness movement is Krishna consciousness. In other words, the whole point is to be conscious of Krishna. And so having a Mangalarti, class, japa, all those things really do keep our minds in Krishna if, first of all, if we're awake. And say if the class is not just sort of supplementary sleep time. Of course, but the class also has to be interesting. It has to be interesting. Prabhupada said once that if we give the Bhagavatam class daily, he said, then every day there will be new lights. So the people giving the Bhagavatam class should be devotees who are actively advancing, who are getting realizations, and don't simply, Prabhupada said, what did he say? He said, we don't just repeat like a parrot. In other words, obviously we have a philosophy. It's not that we give a new philosophy in every class. So we have our philosophy, and yet it's not just saying the same thing over and over and over again, but rather there should be realization, and there should be a fresh perspective, and we should study the scriptures seriously and systematically, so people are really learning something rather than just being reminded of what they already knew the day before, but actually learning something, getting fresh realization. So by all these activities, and then serving Krishna. And in a temple, in a good temple, where there is good organization, we're busy all day in Krishna consciousness. Of course, Krishna says in the Gita that we should take time in moderation for recreation, relaxing. The word he uses is vihara, just like Krishna is called Raja Vihari, which means the one who enjoys or has different pastimes, recreational activities. In Vraja, that's Vihari, is one who enjoys, and then the enjoyment itself, or the relaxing, or the recreation, is Vihara. And that's the word Krishna uses in the Gita, where he says, Yuktahara Viharasya. One should be yukta, or moderate, in ahara, which means eating, or in general engaging material objects with the senses, and viharasya, vihara, recreation or enjoyment. So yuktahara viharasya. Anyway, having a regular spiritual life where every day one rises early and worships Krishna and fixes the mind on Krishna, one honors the great acharyas for us, beginning with Prabhupada, and then to hear about Krishna, to learn more about Krishna. And then during the day, one's mind's in Krishna. As we know, people living in temples, as we know from ISKCON history, at times can be unkind, even cruel, discriminatory, bullying. So I don't mean to say that everyone or most people in temples are that, but it's, as we know, it's possible for someone actually living within a Hare Krishna temple, and for someone who is even getting up early and doing the program, to actually behave in very unkind ways and to engage in inappropriate behavior. And that's why Rupa Goswami says in the Upadeshamrita that he said of the 6 things that destroy bhakti, shadbir bhakti vinashati, that bhakti is destroyed by these 6 things. And one of them is niyamagraha, which Prabhupada explains in Sanskrit. Niyama means a rule, like a regular principle. And graha means, well, it's like we have the same word in English, grasp, or grab, grah, from Sanskrit. So niyama, so the word niyamagraha in Sanskrit, the 2 words can be divided either as niyama agraha, which means not grasping, not taking the regular principles, or niyama agraha. Is an intensifier. So niyama agraha means sort of taking it as an end in itself. And as Prabhupada explains, our bhakti will be ruined if we don't follow principles, or if we follow them as sort of an end in itself. Because I get up early, because I go to these programs, because I chant or this or that, therefore I am a great devotee, or therefore I am Krishna conscious. And because bhakti yoga is not mechanical, I mean, there's you could say a mechanistic part of it. Like you do this, you do that, you repeat things so many times, like 16 rounds. But ultimately, those practices, or those repetitions or regulations, are simply an opportunity to develop devotion. So one has to consciously cultivate a mood of devotion to Krishna in chanting japa, or in the class, or in kirtan. One has to be conscious and not think that the act itself, by itself, will make me perfect. We have to be giving ourselves to Krishna, offering ourselves as servants of Krishna through the medium of those activities. The activities themselves are simply a medium. And as we know, we've seen many people who appear to be practicing very strictly, and then they suddenly, they're missing in action. Or, they engage in some really unfortunate activity. And that's because you have to bring devotion to these activities. You have to bring the right, to use the word everyone uses, the right intention. I feel funny saying that because it's become such a cliche. Fix your intention. But it's true. Our intention is really very important. I say all that because it's impossible to give just a blanket endorsement of temple life, considering some of the really unfortunate things that go on. And so, therefore, I want to be explicit that certain kinds of temples, I think, are really are wonderful. Someone could say, well, it's better to be in any temple, but some temples destroy people's spiritual lives because of the way they're treated. So in the real world, it has to be a good temple. Anyway, I am, as you may know, somehow involved with the project Krishna West. And so I was just walking down the street one day and someone sold me this Krishna West t-shirt. Anyway, so what we really need in Krishna West is to develop temples, communities, where people can seriously practice Krishna consciousness. And but I don't mean to say everyone has to live in a temple, because if you have a temple community, some people may actually live within the temple compound and do certain services. But then again, lots of other people in the community, most people will just come and take advantage of those facilities. So when I say a temple, I don't just mean actually necessarily living in the temple, but just being part of that community. So we really need temple communities. And of course, for myself, I have been remembering just how wonderful it can be to have that kind of spiritual life where you wake up early and just from the very beginning, you're always thinking of Krishna. Because as we know, the easiest thing in the world is to think of something else. There's nothing easier than thinking of something else that's not Krishna. And so to create an atmosphere where everything around us and everything we're doing fosters Krishna, direct Krishna consciousness, thinking of the person Krishna, and really living all day, every day with that magic, the magic of Krishna. One time a devotee wrote a letter to Prabhupada saying, Prabhupada, we're trying to preach, please give us a secret weapon. So Prabhupada wrote back and said, the secret weapon is Krishna's beauty. So no one else knows that actually, that God is infinitely beautiful. So that's the secret ingredient, XL20, that you only find in Bhakti Yoga. It's just like every toothpaste has some secret ingredient or laundry detergent. So, but the secret cleansing agent, the real magic is Krishna. Prabhupada said our secret weapon is Krishna's beauty. So I'm not going to go on very long, but I just wanted to say that what we really need in Krishna West is to develop, now at this point, I believe, among other things, in temple communities, where of course we do things in appropriate ways for Krishna West. We do things in a way that we feel is best suited to spread this movement, but at the same time, to create communities where people can really be absorbed in thinking of Krishna and remember Krishna all the time, and become attached to Krishna. And by that attachment to Krishna, to really give up one's attachment to this world and to really become gradually a pure devotee of Krishna. So that's the message, just the power and the beauty of a good Hare Krishna temple. So thank you for listening. See you guys later. Hare Krishna.